So, welcome to the San Francisco Jewish Community Safety Briefing. Welcome to our participants joining us via Zoom today and also our panelists. And thank you all for being here for this important event. I'm Julia Mates, Director of Policy and Government Affairs at JCRC Bay Area. We are the largest collective voice of the Bay Area Jewish community, representing over 70 Jewish organizations throughout each of the Bay Area counties. And today we're pleased to welcome our panelists, starting with District Attorney Brooke Jenkins. DA Jenkins was sworn in as San Francisco's 31st district attorney in January 2023. A former prosecutor, she now oversees the investigation and prosecution of criminal cases throughout the county. We deeply appreciate her commitment to fighting anti-Semitism and advancing justice for all. Next, we're also joined by Captain Amy Hurwitz, who currently leads the San Francisco Police Department Ingleside Station and serves as the chief's liaison to the Jewish community. Captain Hurwitz has served across several districts, including the Tenderloin, Richmond, and Ingleside, and has held leadership roles at Central, Southern, and Northern stations. And she's deeply committed to protecting the Ingleside community and all San Franciscans. And we have Raphael Brinner in his 8th year leading the Jewish Community Federation's Community Security Program. After a federal career in counterterrorism, Rafi now provides training, security advice, and technical assistance to synagogues, day schools, and other Jewish community organizations in Northern California. So welcome to all of you, and thank you again for joining us today. Since many in our community are eager to hear from DA Jenkins and Captain Hurwitz, we'll begin today's briefing with a Q&A session with them, and then we'll turn to Rafi Brinner, who will offer important guidance on how we as a Jewish community can take meaningful steps to keep ourselves safe. So DA Jenkins and Captain Hurwitz, let's talk about incidents and rising anti-Semitism we've seen here in San Francisco, where there have been disturbing occurrences over the past few months. People attacked simply for being visibly Jewish, the terrible event that occurred at Manny's last month, hateful graffiti in neighborhoods and on social media. These aren't just isolated events. They're part of a wave of intimidation that's left people scared to walk down the street wearing a Star of David or to host a public event. And many of these acts are tied, sometimes explicitly, to global events. I know we want to stay focused in this discussion on issues related to what is impacting the Jewish community in San Francisco, but we want to also acknowledge that we commonly see an increase in anti-Jewish rhetoric and violence during times when Israel is in the headlines. So our first question is for both of you. How are your respective offices approaching investigations and prosecutions of these incidents, not only in terms of arrests and holding individuals accountable, but also in sending a strong public message that anti-Semitic violence and intimidation, no matter the geopolitical backdrop, will not be tolerated in San Francisco? And can you both speak specifically about the investigation process and how your agencies work together?
So I'm happy to start. So thank you so much for having me and for putting this together. I know that there has been a lot of concern in this community based on the recent events that you mentioned. The responsibility of my office essentially is to take cases that are submitted to us from the San Francisco Police Department or any other law enforcement agency that conducts investigations and makes arrests and decide whether or not we have sufficient evidence to prosecute the case. So the standard for arrest is probable cause, so more likely than not that somebody committed the crime, and then we assess whether we believe there is evidence to prove somebody is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So I want to say that because there's a process to the way sort of investigations and arrests happen before we are able to prosecute. Sometimes we will receive evidence in a case and we will believe that if follow-up is done and more evidence is gathered, that we might be able to get over the hurdle of charging the case, even if we don't believe we have sufficient evidence at that point in time. So our job is to work with the San Francisco PD and other investigative agencies to say, do we need more? And if so, guide them on what specifically we need in order to feel that we have sufficient evidence. Oftentimes what we will see in incidents where there is some suspicion of a hate crime or a belief that it's a hate crime is we will have to have them go back and further investigate that and to gather more evidence to kind of not only allow us to charge the underlying crime. So what I mean by that is if it's a vandalism and assault, that crime, but then also be able to add that hate crime enhancement. And so that is the way that the process works, as far as from the phase of an incident happening, being investigated, being submitted to our office, and then what happens once it's in the DA's office. If we believe that we have enough to charge the case, then we charge what we believe we can prove. Like I said, hopefully in a situation where it is clear that, or believe that this is a hate-based or hate-motivated crime, that we are able to charge that enhancement. And then we move forward to court in order to prosecute the case in court and push towards either trial or some type of resolution in the case. For me, my responsibility is, regardless of the type of hate, regardless of what motivates it, whether it's an international war, whether it's anything, that we have to make sure that everybody in San Francisco understands we don't tolerate hate crimes, period, in our city. We've seen this when I first took over. We were at the peak of hate crimes and hate incidents towards the Asian community. This changes over time. It doesn't matter what the situation is that leads it to increase. We need to make it clear, and we do make it clear, that there's no tolerance for that, and that we will do our jobs to make sure that people are held accountable when those things happen. Most recently, as you saw, we were able to charge a hate crime in this most recent incident. Sufficient evidence was gathered to allow us to do that. And so it's vitally important that people report what's happening, even if you're not sure whether it crosses the line of being a crime. The police department needs to be tracking what's going on. We need to have this information so that even if on one occasion it doesn't amount to a crime, that later on, if there is something else that happens, that we have information to suggest or prove what that person's motivations might be on a future date, and if it's hate-based. And so that is why it is so vitally important that people call in and report what is happening, see something, say something, so that then we have the evidence that we need in the future should something happen then, where we can demonstrate to a jury that it's very clear that this person's actions were motivated by bias or hate or animus at that point in time.
Great, thank you.
I think that was pretty thorough. I'll add a couple of things on, and I will just sort of, really point out that you have to report these things. So just like DA Jenkins said, if you don't report it, we won't know about it, and none of this process is ever going to happen. I mean, I will say be prepared, because this is a process. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to pick up a phone, or someone else is going to call or somehow get in touch with us. Officers are going to come to you, or you're going to come to us, and you're going to make a police report. And that's what starts this whole ball rolling. So from there, our investigative units will take over. Now, everybody always wants to know from the police, what is happening with my case? Well, I'll tell you, once the investigative units get your case, there's not a lot of information that we can deliver. We have to sort of protect the sanctity of that case, and we don't want evidence leaking out. So we're not really going to talk about it. We may be able to give you a little eyebrow up or something like that, but we kind of keep it tight-lipped. So just expect that. It's not that we're not doing anything. We care about you and we're trying to help you. But that's when we start to collaborate with the DA's office and find out what we have and what kind of evidence we have. The San Francisco Police Department is a little bit different in terms that they have a liaison to the Jewish community. And I can't say that many other departments that I know of have this. LA probably has it, and I think New York. So we're lucky, our community is lucky that we have this. And I think that we're lucky that we also have this relationship with the DA's office. DA Jenkins is one of the first DAs that I've seen actually take an interest in helping to protect our community. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So just delving a little more to the topic of hate crimes, DA Jenkins, we appreciate that your office has actively pursued hate crime prosecutions, including, as you mentioned, also the recent assaults in the marina that impacted the Jewish community. So can you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned hate crime enhancement, and for folks who maybe don't understand that term or exactly what it means in the context of what you do. And then the required elements of a hate crime and how it's different from hate speech, which, while objectionable, is constitutionally protected. I think that's an important distinction.
Yes, and those are both very valid and great questions. So, essentially, let me start with what constitutes a hate crime versus something like hate speech. Yes, we are afforded by the First Amendment the freedom of speech. Sadly, that means we are allowed to say, as U.S. citizens, anything that we want, so long as it doesn't cross the line into a criminal threat. There is criminal speech, which is if you threaten to harm someone, and there's an immediacy to that threat. But other than that, sadly, we live in a country where people are allowed to spew hate, so long as it is only their speech. Where it crosses the line into a hate crime is when someone commits any crime that's in the penal code. Again, it could be arson, assault, murder, vandalism, you name it, and that crime was motivated by someone's hate, animus, or bias towards a protected group. And so what happens is we can sometimes only find evidence for the underlying crime. So let's say the arson, someone sets a building on fire, and we have it very clear that the person did that. And there may be some suspicion that they did it based on hate for whoever inhabits that building, and the particular demographic that they fit. But perhaps we don't have the sufficient evidence to prove that hatred. We can still charge the arson, but we are not able to charge what is the hate crime enhancement that attaches when we can prove the motivation. So a hate crime is not a crime by itself. It is an enhancement that we add to the underlying charge for the crime that was committed based on its motives. And so what we are looking for is not only proof of that crime, the vandalism, the assault, etc. We are also looking for the proof of the motive in order to charge that hate crime enhancement. And that's so important to so many people because we want the crime that's charged to reflect the full scope of the conduct, right? Anytime we are in a group who feels that, right, or sees a hate crime happen, so many people feel very passionate when we can charge the underlying crime but not the enhancement, because we want that hate crime to be clear. Right? We want that motivation to be clear in the charges. And that's why it's really important that we have sufficient evidence of what someone said at the time that they committed the crime. So again, prior to the arson, somebody says, right, if it's a synagogue, I hate Jews, and lights the building on fire. That is evidence of the motivation for what they are doing. We have to have the evidence of what those statements are. Or let's say somebody doesn't say anything at the time, but they've got a Facebook page full of anti-Semitic rhetoric. We need to have that evidence to demonstrate that that's the reason they burned a synagogue and not a school or something else. And so those are the things that we are looking for to be able to demonstrate somebody's motives. Hate crimes are very difficult to prove. They're one of the only crimes that require proof of motive. The only. And so it's having to get evidence of somebody's thoughts and motivations inside of their heads. And so again, that's why it's really important that we report to the police, even when, let's say, it's a hateful situation that, again, you're not sure, does this cross the line into a crime or not? So that can be documented and the perpetrator can be documented, because that is something we as prosecutors can go back and gather. And then if they do something in the future, be able to use as that proof of motivation. But that's essentially how it works. I'm not sure if I answered your entire question.
No, you did, definitely. And I think what's really important for the community to hear is that it's not necessarily for those that have been impacted or witness a crime to determine whether it's a hate crime or not. The idea is to report it and let you determine that. Which also kind of leads me, I think, to my follow-on question, I guess, for Captain Hurwitz, which is that that is sort of what we're seeing is how people are confused as to how to respond to hateful incidents, like vandalism, assaults, security concerns. And so can you sort of walk us through what we should do after an incident, including things that might seem obvious to you, but, who to contact, what deals to mention, when do you call 911 or the non-emergency hotline, things like that.
Absolutely. So, and I think that that's really valid. That's a great question, because what I hear all the time is people will say, I saw this thing, but I just thought I was crazy and I just kept walking, or whatever it is. When your instinct is telling you that something is wrong, oh, something is wrong. And you really should trust that instinct. And if you see, anti-Semitic graffiti, if you see some other type of a hate crime going on, and you sort of have that debate, like, am I going to report this or not? I want you to report it. The other thing that we hear a lot is, well, we didn't want to waste your time, or I was just being biased. It's like, nope, neither one of those things exists. Like, we love it when you waste our time like that, because that's going to be a bad person who's going to come off the street. And you're not being biased. Your instincts are telling you something, and you should listen. So what you do is, depending on the severity of the crime, you're going to either call 911 or you're going to call the non-emergency number. So the information that I'm giving is San Francisco specific, but in general, you can always call 911 from where you are. Now, if you are calling in San Francisco, we have, there's a chance, or wherever you're calling from, but in San Francisco, if you call 911 from your cell phone, there's a very good chance that you are going to go to California Highway Patrol Dispatch. So instead of doing that, I will put it in the chat, and Julia, maybe you could blast it out, is the San Francisco PD cell phone 911 number, which is 553 8090. So 415-553-8090. And that takes you directly to dispatch, instead of having to have that reroute through CHP, which, sometimes a second or 5 seconds make a difference between life and death. So the other thing is, if it's graffiti that's been there and nobody is in danger at the moment, you can call the non-emergency number in San Francisco. That number is 415-553-0123. And most departments have a non-emergency number. So you can, if they're not an immediate threat to life or property, then just go ahead and use the non-emergency number. So that's what I would tell you. I think that, we need that to get that information in, because really no police department is going to do anything if they don't have a report.
Great. Thank you so much. Moving on a little bit to protests and free speech. And again, these are all sort of lines that sometimes are blurred for our community. So I think this has come up quite a bit for DA Jenkins. We know that the First Amendment protects freedom of speech and expression, but many in our community are concerned about protests that seem to blur the line between hate speech and hate crimes. We did touch a little bit on that already, but can you tell us a little bit more about how your office distinguishes between constitutionally protected protest or speech and behavior that crosses into criminal intimidation, harassment, or incitement, particularly when anti-Semitic rhetoric is involved, and then, your office's policies on balancing the right to protest against actions that violate criminal law?
Yes, so I would say this, any, again, acts of vandalism, any criminal threat, which is, the penal code requires, again, that there be an imminent threat, that not only there be threatening speech, but that there be an immediacy to the potential harm. So not, I'm going to, come back and find you and do something to you a week from now, but that you are making a threat that it could be reasonably believed to be followed through on at that time. And so for anyone who is, chanting something, but then looks over at a counter protester and says, I'm about to, and then choose your form of harm, that could cross the line into a crime, because that would be considered a criminal threat, because it's an imminent threat of danger to that other person. Other than that, quite frankly, again, it is the state of affairs in the United States that people can say many, many things that will be hurtful, offensive, bigoted, and, and that be legal, right? And it not be anything that the police or my office can do anything about. Where I have drawn the line with demonstrations has been to the extent that they put the public in danger, then I have to make sure that we follow through with prosecution when these individuals are arrested. That is why people were prosecuted for the demonstrations on the bridges. I have prosecuted other protesters in the city who have chain themselves to things inside of businesses that make it impossible for the business to function and for people to do the necessary things that they need to do for their daily lives, that right could again impact their health or other things. And so that is where we draw the line, is when the police come in and they are able to lawfully give orders for someone to disperse, and people are not doing that, and they're not doing it in a way that compromises public safety, then I have to step in and follow through with the prosecution of those protesters at that time. And so that has really been what the basis of those charges has been, and not the speech or which cause they represent, right? This isn't about whether I agree with one side or the other. It's strictly based on the law and whether or not it's an unlawful assembly that people have been ordered to remove themselves from for safety reasons, and they refuse to do that. And it actually does pose a danger to the public, be it someone's actual safety, like, threat of danger, or their health. And so for the bridges, a lot of that was health concerns that were posed to people on the bridge, unable to get to the restroom, get to doctor's appointments, babies without formula that they think that they needed to drink, those kinds of things that caused us to have to do what we needed to do to make it clear those lines can't be crossed.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's actually very helpful. So, Captain Hurwitz, San Francisco Police Department's often the first to respond when tensions rise at a protest, and the way officers make decisions on the ground matters a lot. And so, when demonstrations are planned near synagogues or Jewish schools or JCCs, et cetera, what proactive steps does San Francisco PD take to coordinate with institutions to ensure the safety of the congregants or students or the participants?
Sure. Well, our main goal is we have to protect First Amendment rights. Sometimes we don't appreciate, other people's First Amendment rights because they're saying something that's offensive to us. But San Francisco Police Department, our first thing is we're going to protect, First Amendment rights. Of course, we're protecting life, and property. But in terms of a demo, we're listening for what is being said. Are these things that are being said with intent to terrorize, or is this just, some free speech thing? So we also have policies and procedures that we have to follow. So when these situations arise, if we don't have any heads up, if we have no notice about it, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. So if there's anything that you know about, that's a pre-planned thing. We have a whole special investigations division that sniffs constantly the internet and other sources to find when are these protests happening, because we want to be able to protect the public as best we can. So when we have these things, we're able to set up barriers, get the right equipment there, get the right amount of officers there, and keep people separate and try to protect property. So we really do appreciate a heads up. The other thing is, when we're talking about blocking entrances or blocking sidewalks, you really can't do that like that. You can't block somebody's movement. It's almost like it goes back to the bridge, what DA Jenkins was talking about. Like there's almost a false imprisonment, or there is a false imprisonment component to it. Like people have to be able to move freely. And once you start blocking their premise or their movement, then we have a whole different situation. The other thing that I would also just remind people of is if you know about these things in advance, please give your, San Francisco Police Department, your local agency a heads up about it, because we need to know so we can prepare. But also you have resources like NCRIC, and let's go with NCRIC because I know Kim Pratt's on this call somewhere. But they take this information and they compile it and they get us ready for the next one, or they get us ready for whatever's coming. And they have the ability to also, we call it sniff the internet. So put, AI or whatever you kids call it onto the internet to let us know, like, how many times have we heard the word Jewish, or how many times have we heard this word? And then it can really help us focus our resources. So, again, we're not going to get through this by ourselves. We're going to have to do this together. And I think as many partner agencies as we can bring in is a great idea.
Great. Okay. And just a kind of a last question on this topic. So, is there anything that your offices are doing to communicate to the public, protest organizers that you might know of? That a protest is a right, that targeted harassment or hate-fueled escalation will lead to legal consequences. Is there messaging like that kind of out to the general public?
Go ahead.
I mean, to start, I don't know that, that there's been a general message about that. Again, I don't have the right to curtail hateful speech. People are allowed to engage in hateful speech. I think so far I've been pretty clear about where many of the boundary lines are based on these very public prosecutions that have resulted in a lot of controversy and a lot of media attention. And so I do believe that on those grounds, people are very aware of what those boundary lines are. And I haven't seen many of them crossed since then, since the last prosecution. It doesn't mean, though, that people who are committed, right, sadly committed to the destruction and crossing that line won't do it. And so I think, again, we've had a number of press conferences and other very public forums where I have spoken about these issues and about this specific topic of, demonstrations related to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And it's been articulated many times, right? What will and will not be acceptable in San Francisco.
Yeah, thank you. And our community really appreciates that deeply. Just that it's not a secret that in San Francisco, those things aren't tolerated. So that's very helpful and helpful for our community to know also that the responsibility is sort of off us in trying to figure out what is hate and what is hate speech and what is not. So at this point, I think we'd like to bring in our local Jewish community leader, Rafi Brinner from the Jewish Community Federation, who is going to talk to us a little bit about what we can do within our community to increase our security as much as possible. So welcome, Rafi. Thanks so much for joining us. So I guess that maybe the first question for you is if you could share with us maybe some community resources, reporting best practices, and how your team works with San Francisco law enforcement for some of the safety of the Jewish community.
Absolutely. So pretty much anytime there's an incident in San Francisco, I'll be reaching out directly to Captain Hurwitz. And the effect of this connection, we've been working together for 7 years now, is to elevate the situation quickly. A report can get lost in the works, but if you make a police report and you give me the number, I can pass that number to Amy, and Amy can get it into the bloodstream with just that extra oomph that's going to get it dealt with that much more quickly. And if there is a hate component to this, it's also elevating the fact that this is potentially a hate crimes enhancement situation. And too often people outside the community or law enforcement officers who haven't been sensitized to all the nuances of the recent conflicts might not interpret it as a hate crime on the face of it. or a hate incident, and we need to do our part to really spell that out for the law enforcement partners that we work with, not just in San Francisco, but around the Bay. And in San Francisco, we have the great resource of Amy Hurwitz, so I'm going to blow some sunshine her way on that. Other resources we've started in the last month or two to offer an online virtual security training every 2 weeks. The next one is this Thursday at lunchtime, and Jessica, if you can put the link for that in the chat, that'd be wonderful. We do in 50 minutes, we cover some security fundamentals, and it's really focused on what you need getting around in your neighborhood, in your regular workday, while you're running errands. It's not about securing organizations so much, although it overlaps with that. And those security fundamentals are just the things that help us get through our own fears and anxieties, which are perfectly natural in the world that we live in right now. I liken the situation for Jewish Americans now very much to what Asian Americans were confronting after the COVID pandemic began, and the rhetoric around a China virus and so forth was resulting in Asian Americans being targeted for how they looked, with no direct responsibility for the spread of this virus. And so American Jews in the Bay Area feel the same way now of something's happening thousands of miles away that we are not taking a direct role in and or didn't have a vote in, and we're being targeted for that. And so understanding that larger context is something that we help communicate to law enforcement partners around Northern California, and specifically with SFPD and FBI here locally.
Great, thank you. So again, Rafi, this question's to you. As Jewish San Franciscans, as you said, we find ourselves in a delicate place right now. It's a very worrisome time. At the same time, we are proud of who we are and committed to standing up for our community and our values, and also showing up for others. And so, but we're aware that visibility could bring risk, whether it's at public events or in schools or even walking down the street. And so many in our community are asking now, how do we stay vocal and visible and brave while also protecting ourselves, our children, and our institutions? I mean, some in our community are asking if we should even be participating in that visible way anymore.
Yeah, so I would not question being visible. I mean, I think this really ties in with what I was just saying about the Asian American community. You don't go and hide when people are targeting you for, completely bogus reasons. What I would add to that is that, many of us, my daughter included, went to summer camps where we sang a song about the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to be afraid. And looking this up online, I found that the rabbi who this quote is attributed to actually used a reflexive verb, that we shouldn't make ourselves afraid. That's the most important thing. And so in that context, I really think we need to live our lives in our community, not making ourselves afraid. When we do that, we take one incident like the one in the marina, and we amplify the impact of that on behalf of the people that meant us harm. So if we can go out there and continue to live our lives proudly, we can, point to DA Jenkins' strong position on the incident in the marina, and someone bothers you and say, I'm going to get DA Jenkins to come after you. Maybe that's the answer. But regardless, it's really a sense that we belong here. We have a right to be here, and we have a right to the lives that we're living. We shouldn't let others narrow that down for us.
That's right. Great. Well, at this point, I'd like to introduce, actually, for our last question, Teresa Drenick from EJC, which is also a co-sponsor for today's briefing. And Teresa is going to ask our final question to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you for including the American Jewish Committee in this. We love partnering with JCRC and know how important the issues of public safety are for the city and county of San Francisco. So I think that what I would like to pose to Captain Hurwitz, DA Jenkins, and Rafi Brinner is sort of a larger question, knowing how fearful the community is feeling at this time, and also somewhat isolated in our fear. What would you like to say, both from yourselves and from the perspective of the agency that you're here representing, to the Jewish community, many, hundreds of whom are tuned in and listening now. And I'll start with DA Jenkins. Thank you.
Would say this, you know, sadly, these issues are not new in our country. And so many of us come from a background where at one point in time, we were the target, right? And so what I would say is we have to keep fighting. We have to keep, I think, as Rafi said, hold your head up high, be who you are. Of course, we have to be smart about the way that we move, especially when we're talking about our kids. But trust that we, as law enforcement and as a San Francisco government, are going to do what we are supposed to do to protect San Franciscans and to protect people who visit San Francisco. We are not going to sit by and watch things happen and do nothing. We are not going to sit by and let things fester without speaking up about it. And I hope that this community feels that we have done that thus far and that we will continue to do that. We want to be in community so that we can hear what's going on. I want to thank people who have been a part of my Jewish Community Advisory Board. I know Rafi comes to those meetings, and I'm very thankful for that. I know, Julia, you've been at those meetings. I know that is a place where people can come to the table here at the DA's office and say what's going on, so that we can fill people in real time about what to do, and so that we can start a response along with SFPD right away if that's necessary. And so a lot of this is about open communication, trusting us that we will do our jobs, and to hang in there during what we know is a difficult time. But we will all get through this. We will all get through this, and we will get through it together.
Thank you, DA Jenkins. And I know you are really a role model for how our community hopes all DAs will tackle the time that we're in. Rafi, I throw the same question to you, and then I'll end it with Captain Hurwitz.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. Going around the community, I hear a lot of people's fears, and they're natural fears. It's what we're all feeling, especially the last year and a half. And what we lose sight of is that we run a much higher risk every day putting our kids in their car seat and getting on the freeway and driving across a bridge to another part of the Bay Area. That's the more likely scenario that we're going to face some kind of harm than just going about our daily lives. So I think it's a matter of perspective, partly to realize that even while we feel fearful and feel threatened, that the risk calculation is actually, it's a low risk environment. We do not have people, unless you're getting direct threats, we do not have people looking for us as individual members of this community. And in the chat, you'll find links to report threats. So if something does come your way and you are directly threatened, or there's a situation that you need help with, you can contact us and Secure Community Network with one reporting form, and the other one is for ADL. So if you have an instance of hate speech or anti-Semitic flyers or graffiti, things like that, ADL tracks very closely, and so please report those to ADL. So there are ways of getting assistance with those situations you may face, and that's the low risk outcome.
Thank you. And Captain Hurwitz, I know that the city of San Francisco is so fortunate to have a police department that has designated a liaison to the Jewish community. It's remarkable, and I'd like for you to have a few words to the community.
Sure. The first thing I would say is no one is alone here. You are not alone. My department will help you. We're here to help you. These are unprecedented times. I don't like them. I don't like, what we're seeing, but what I'm not seeing or hearing is chatter. I'm not, we're not picking up, the information that all these attacks are coming, or that groups are going to be embarking on San Francisco to harm people or anywhere near us. So I think that that's positive. I would say that I want everyone to continue to report this because we have to know what's going on. But the other thing is, we're hiring. So, and I know that that sounds really crazy and really funny, but I've talked to so many groups, so many Jewish groups, and I'm like, we're hiring and I need you to work with me because I don't have that many Jewish officers working here. And I'm very big on representing the communities that we serve. I would like to see way more women in this department to, represent the women of the community that we serve. But I would also like to see more Jewish officers because the Jewish struggle or the Jewish experience is very different from what a lot of other people have experienced. And I think that we need more people who understand that in my department, who can better able help people who are going through that issue. So we're hiring. Anybody need a job? We're hiring. No age limit. So, but that's it. You're not alone, and we will always help you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for that. I want to thank each of you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. I know that you're all very busy and have a lot going on. And so I really want to thank you for joining us. As we've reiterated, and as you can obviously tell, just from working with our community, this is a really worrisome time for our Jewish community. And so I'm extremely proud, but also reassured by being able to have the local government of San Francisco and the law enforcement and the district attorney of the county of San Francisco to be able to say that, hate is not tolerated and that you're doing everything you can to ensure the safety of all communities and including our Jewish community. So I just very much want to thank you for joining us today. And then also our co-sponsors, AJC and the Jewish Community Federation. This briefing, again, has been recorded, and we'll make the link available to anyone who was not able to join. And also, we'll make sure to send out those resources and links that we mentioned. But again, DA Jenkins and Captain Hurwitz and Rafi Brinner, thank you so much for joining us. And from the team at JCRC Bay Area, thanks. Stay safe and take care.